guys, Deanne here from Canada Abroad, and thanks for tuning in. Now, on this week's FAQ Friday, we are going to be talking about what happens if you are pregnant or get pregnant during an immigration application. Now, I'm going to be tailoring this specifically to the Express Entry program, but if you have another type of application, paper-based application, it's going to be a very similar process. But I'm going to be tailoring this to Express Entry mostly because it has an upfront medical component, and that can be quite an issue if you are pregnant. So the first situation could be that you're going through this process and you're going to submit your application. So you've gone into the Express Entry system. If you are pregnant when you go into the Express Entry system, there's nowhere to note this on the application. So don't worry, there's really nowhere on your Express Entry application even to mention children until you've received an invitation to apply. So if you are creating that Express Entry profile and you're wondering where you're going to mention your children, don't worry, that comes later, only after you've received an invitation to apply. Now, if you have received the invitation to apply, there's only going to be the option to declare children who are already born. So if you are pregnant, you're not going to be able to declare them on the application. But what you're going to want to do is, number one, you do have to do an upfront medical as part of the process. So typically what I recommend, and this is personal preference, but it's going to be useful. When you go for the medical, let them know that you are pregnant. And part of that medical process is a chest x-ray. So obviously as a pregnant individual, you can opt out of the chest x-ray and you would let them know that you're going to complete it after the child is born. Now, the doctor will note that on the medical as well and note that you were pregnant so that the chest x-ray could not be completed. And you would be allowed to then complete the chest x-ray after the child was born, regardless of what stage you're going to be at. Now, if this is the option that you select, what's going to happen is they will only be able to process your application to a certain point, and it'll be basically put aside until your child is born. And once the child is born, you are then going to need to get them a passport. You're going to need their unabridged birth certificate. You're going to need to take them for a medical, and you are then going to have to complete your chest x-ray. And you would send those documents then in to be added to the application, along with the processing fee for your additional child. And they would then resume processing your application. Now, one other thing that you need to note is if you are pregnant during the application, when you're looking at the amount of settlement funds that you need, you're going to want to remember that as soon as that child is born, you need to have enough settlement funds for that additional family member. So if you only needed settlement funds for a family of 2, for them to finalize the application, they're going to need to see that you have enough settlement funds for a family of 3. So that's very important to remember. Now, if your child is born and you haven't managed to get them these documents and they send you a passport request, so they say, look, we're ready to finalize your application, send us your passports. When you get that passport request, it's very clear on there if there has been any changes to your family circumstances to let them know. So if you're still pregnant at that stage, you're going to want to let them know. So we are pregnant, and let them know the due date, because then you can add the child to the application that way. But they would then again hold off on issuing you with your immigrant visas until that child was born. And they again will need the same documents: a valid passport for the child, unabridged birth certificate. The child will need to go for a medical, and then they can be added and get that immigrant visa with you. If the child had already been born, then what you can do is contact them and let them know, this is the new addition to our file, here are all of the documents, and then you can send in all of your passports together. Now, that's what to do if the child is born before your immigrant visas are issued. If you have already been issued with your visas and you have not yet moved to Canada, you're going to have to contact the local embassy and let them know of the change to your family status as well. Because even though you're technically been issued with that immigrant visa, if you haven't flown into Canada to activate it, you're not yet a permanent resident. So you're going to need to let them know of that change to your family status, and then they will let you know what documents they're going to need to proceed with that. The last option, or the last situation really, is if you've already gone to Canada, activated your permanent residence, and then you're going to have the child. So maybe you're pregnant at that stage, or you only found out you're pregnant. But if you have the child in Canada and you have already activated your permanent residence, that child is a Canadian citizen by birth. Where it gets more complicated is if you fly out of Canada and go have your child maybe in your home country or anywhere else. That child is not a Canadian citizen by birth, and you would have to then sponsor them under the family class. And depending on your situation, if you and the other parent are both permanent residents of Canada, one of you has to physically be in Canada to sponsor that child, because only Canadian citizens can be outside of Canada and do an application under the family class. So that's just important to keep in mind as well, because there might be a period where you could be separated depending on your nationality, because there is the in Canada class for family sponsorship. But if you're not visa exempt, the embassies are quite difficult in issuing the newborn child a visit visa to enter Canada with the intention of lodging an immigration application. Sometimes they will refuse those visit visas and you would be stuck in your home country, separated from your spouse for several months while you're going through this sponsorship process. So just keep that in mind. If you are from a visa exempt country, then it's a lot less difficult in those terms. So it would just be really dependent on your own individual background. So those are the different situations that might come up if you are pregnant or have a child during this whole process. But, I always tell people, don't stress about it. Go ahead with your immigration application. And if you find out you're pregnant, they can be added at any time. So don't let it stop you from starting your application. They can definitely be added at different times. And with express entry, people always ask, do children add points, take away points? They don't. They don't add any points and they don't take any points away. So they really wouldn't change anything in terms of your comprehensive ranking system score. So thanks for tuning in to this week's FAQ Friday. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all the latest Canadian immigration news and updates. And don't forget that we have some upcoming videos over the next week and a half talking about working in Canada, studying in Canada, and the cost of living in Canada. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.